Do you have any fun travel coming up? Spring break's coming up.
Spring break, and we are doing nothing, and I'm so excited.
You guys really aren't doing anything?
No, we have a baseball tournament like the first weekend in Houston.
Oh.
But we're not going anywhere. And just last night I was like, we have no plans, and I am so happy.
Yeah, that'll be cool.
Will you guys then at the last minute just decide, let's go?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I think we're going to be happy to just be home. We'll do stuff together.
Sure.
But we will have just space to just be together. You know, our spring is just the busiest time of year for us, and so it'll be really nice.
Yeah.
We're excited.
March Madness is over spring break, so that'll be cool.
That will be fun. I mean, that'll be really fun.
Watch a lot of basketball.
Mm-hmm. Are y'all going somewhere?
I don't know yet. I feel like there's so many things that has to happen before we get to there.
Yes.
Adeline's birthday is at the front end of that. There's just, it's crazy. Megan, new job, so a lot of stuff going on. So, yeah. It's like, I can't think about that. It feels like so far.
I'm just trying to get to this weekend.
It's not that far away, though.
I know.
It's not.
Yeah.
But there's just a lot that has to happen before that.
And then there's Easter.
Oh, God.
Yeah.
Not, oh, God, in a bad way. I see
Your workload leading up to Easter increases quite a bit.
Not Easter.
Yeah, not Easter. No.
Speaking of Easter, we're about to be in Passover.
That's true. That's a good segue. All right, so
Speaking of Easter.
Speaking of Easter.
All right, so last week we finished up with the plague of darkness. God's kind of fully, as you so eloquently gave us the paradigm.
Probably not, but
yeah, it's all a deconstruction narrative. So everything's kind of wiped out, dark, and then here we are with the final plague.
Yeah, as the stage is set for this big thing.
Yeah.
But yesterday, Rachel and I were just briefly talking in the office, kind of in passing, and say what you said.
Oh my gosh, what are we?
Without me,
I don't know what we're talking about yet.
No.
Just kidding. I wasn't in the office. So
You weren't. It was just in passing. But we were talking briefly about we got to save. Let's not talk about the podcast or talk about Exodus because we knew we wanted to talk about it today. But you said
Exodus
there's not.
is my favorite book.
No, she didn't. But you said something along the lines of how connected the rest of the Bible is to Genesis or Exodus or both, Genesis and Exodus.
Oh.
Do you remember?
No, but I do. Cause I really have been thinking. There's so much in all these chapters that I'm like, we could have 2 months of podcast on Genesis and then 2 months on Exodus. But everything in the entire story of Scripture is either hearkening back to the Genesis creation story or it's a remembrance of this Exodus. So it's really like creation and redemption, creation, redemption, creation, redemption. We already have seen that over and over in Genesis. I mean, I'm even looking right now at Scripture. It says the final plague, which is, the 9th plague is darkness. So it's this undoing of the goodness of creation, which the final enemy is what? Death, right? So then there's death at the end, but then there's redemption. There's redemption, and then God creates a new people. And we've seen that happen over and over. There's this chaotic event, there's this rebellion, there's judgment, but then God saves and redeems. And then he begins again with people. And he says, this is what it looks like to live under my blessing. And then you start to see the same thing happen over and over again. So it's creation, God's purposes, rebellion, evil, destruction, judgment, and then God making things new and redeeming. And that's what we see here. But this is the primary example of it. This is the big moment for the Israelites. And then we'll see it throughout the rest of Scripture. Almost nothing doesn't reference. I think that's what I said.
Yeah,
there's almost no.
Yeah.
I really believe this. If you're studying the New Testament and you're like, what is this talking about? There is almost nothing. Every verse is a reference to Genesis and Exodus. I mean, almost all of it.
Yeah. So since you said that yesterday, I've been thinking maybe I need a 5th question in my. I have 4 questions that you can use anytime, and the 5th one is all right, how does this call back to or fit
Genesis
within that story and that
Exodus.
repetitive creation and then some
Deliverance,
separation or fall and then need for redemption and how does that at the very beginning show up in whatever you're reading now? Because I remember a while back writing a paper on something in the Old Testament, but how sometimes what we do is we take Jesus and we try to cram him backwards into the Old Testament. And that's not really the heart of trying to find Jesus in the Old Testament scriptures. It's really how it leads to him. And it maybe is a good discipline to, if you're becoming more and more familiar with the story, to begin trying to, wherever you are, think back and find those connections in reverse, not just always looking ahead to Jesus. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it is so connected from beginning to end.
I mean, we'll go through this with Passover, but I mean, even when you think, or when you're reading through like Hebrews, and it talks about Jesus is the final, all these things, it's because sacrifices and redemption were necessary over and over and over again, which is why Jesus is the perfect and final and ultimate answer. He's the ultimate redemption, because it has been necessary so many times. So we forget that. We just think, oh, there's this one thing, it's Jesus. But I mean, it's been this story of this need over and over.
Oh, yeah.
Let's jump in, Ted.
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah,
Ted's like, I don't even know where we are anymore.
You know, like the whole like saying like drinking from a fire hose. I feel like that's some, and so like I'm trying to like process and internalize like what you're saying. I'm like, oh my gosh, so good. And it's like, oh crap, I gotta like think about what I'm gonna say next.
Yeah, now we have to move along.
Trying to do both.
Okay.
No, it's good. So the final plague. This is kind of back to a little bit of what's happening, where God's basically saying, you know, I'm gonna kill all the firstborns, which is, you know, if you look back of the previous plagues, where it's, you know, God is ultimately displaying his ability, his power over these things. I mean, here it is, life and death, his ability to
He gives life, so you can take it.
Yeah.
And also, it's sort of twofold. It's hearkening back to what the Egyptians have done. It's also judgment. So you killed the Israelites, and so the judgment for that is, I'm going to kill your firstborn sons.
Yeah.
And it's also the creation. Like, this is the ultimate curse, is death.
Yeah. Okay. Which leads us into like, if he's going to kill the firstborn of everything.
That's everyone.
That's everyone. How is he going to, or what's he going to do to separate out his people?
Yeah.
And so here we get this institution of not just Passover as the ceremony or the feast. He's using this time to help institute what his plan for.
It's an event, and it becomes a ceremony ritual so
Yeah.
that they remember and participate as generations go.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually a pause in the narrative for the instructions, because each time you're reading along and like the next plague, one after the other. But here, chapter 12 just pauses for some instruction before in verse 29 where it actually happens.
Yeah.
Because here's why. Remember, this is written after the events to these people and their children about how to commemorate this. And so these instructions are not just for this moment, but they're for every year. So you can read back on this. This is how we celebrate.
And I didn't underline it, but I remember reading where it was basically like, hey, dude, this is something like every year you're going to do this for generations, for forever,
Yep.
I think was the word.
Yep.
It's like, not until a certain time, but for forever.
That's why they're still doing it when Jesus.
They're still doing
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Like, what, 1,500 years? Is that? Yeah. Like 1,500 years later. Think about that.
But I don't know, but just forever for me is like, that's how different is forever from eternity?
Well, it's just, you're going to continue doing it.
You will not stop.
You will not stop doing
Yeah.
this. This isn't like, do it so that you really get it and then like move on with your lives because you're free. This is this is a part of your identity as a people.
Yep.
That you were enslaved, and I rescued you through the blood of the Lamb.
Yeah.
I purified you through the blood of the Lamb to be my people. That's what they're remembering every time they do it.
Yeah.
And they're always his people, and that's always who God is. Remember, it's like the purpose of this was so you will know that I'm Yahweh, and so that you can go and worship me. And so it's a reminder all the time, which we need. Otherwise, what do? We start thinking we're our own gods, and we did it ourselves.
We didn't even
grumble
need
in the
rescuing.
wilderness, right? I mean, they start grumbling immediately.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay, so they go through all the details of what they need to do, all the special rituals, which I know one time on the podcast you're talking about like the significance of the hyssop with the blood and the doorposts. And
It's the purification. So
Yeah.
I do think that is important. So it's passing over, right? They want God's judgment because part of this is they're not innocent, right? The Israelites themselves, they're not innocent either. Remember, even when the story of Moses killing the Egyptian, well, then the Hebrews striking the Hebrew. They're striking each other, and this is God striking the firstborn down. So they need something so that God's wrath will pass over them.
Yeah.
The way go ahead.
Sorry. Even while they were still sinners, he made a way. It's
That's
like
right.
he's-
Right.
Yeah.
But sorry, no, go.
No, I was just gonna say the way I've tried to explain this to even my own kids over the years, and when we did the Who's in the Bible Kids podcast, like the blood on the door is a way of saying death has already happened here, because death is going to happen, and so that's kind of the message. Death has happened here, and there's no need to take the firstborn.
Yeah.
There was a substitute.
There's and the blood also though, because I'm sort of teaching about sacrifice and the sacrificial system. For us, we sort of can stop there, but blood also purifies. Blood is life. And the priests in the temple later on, they will sprinkle the blood of the sacrifice, and that's to purify and consecrate the space for the presence of God. It's a setting apart, a consecration, so that they can be holy people in God's presence, because that's what's about to happen. So it's both. And that's, again, what we're alluding to will happen eventually for us, right?
Yeah.
It's this escaping the wrath of God, this forgiveness of sins, this atonement, and a consecration so that we can be his people. That's what blood does.
Yeah. So we have the last plague. It happens, and then Pharaoh's finally like,
Get out of here.
"Yo,
Yeah. Probably with words,
yeah,
some Egyptian words that we would have to bleep out.
bleep out."
Yeah.
Oh, this is an adult podcast. I mean,
No, my daughter just asked me to send all of them to her.
Oh,
So
okay,
I
sorry.
did think. I was like,
well,
What have I said in
PG-13.
there? Yeah.
Yeah. Although, yeah. We'll do like 2000s PG-13, not 19 like 80s PG-13.
yeah, he said, get out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Leave.
Okay. So then we have
They have a friendly plunder. They said, hey,
Yeah.
can we have all of your stuff?
And they're like, yeah.
yes,
Please take it if you will go.
yeah.
take it if
I'm
you will
sure.
go. And it's like this, reparation for all that they've done. And also, again, this idea that, hey, this is really Yahweh. So whoever Yahweh blesses, like if we bless them, maybe Yahweh will bless us. I mean,
yeah.
which is really the promise to Abraham.
Yep. Yep.
I like that you said friendly plunder.
Well, they asked.
"Can we
They're
have
like,
it?"
hey,
I know,
can
yeah,
we
right.
have your
Fri- I
gold?
just-
It
I've
says-
just never heard
it
that.
says they plundered. And
Yeah.
it's like, oh,
I've just
so we
never heard
asked.
friendly plunder. It's like two words that don't really go together.
Yeah.
That's funny.
A gentle plunder.
A gentle.
That's
No,
even
friendly,
worse.
friendly plunder.
Polite
'Cause
plunder
they-
is probably
a
the-
polite plunder. Because they did ask for permission. They had consent.
Yeah.
Okay, so I don't know. Maybe like it gets into the whole where it says that obviously the institution passed over, and then the consecration of the firstborn. Those sections where, those are significant, obviously, or because it's there.
Yeah, but I mean, just think the Lord has taken the life of every firstborn, except those that were spared. And what he's saying now is that the life of the firstborn belongs to me,
Yeah,
one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
they're mine.
They're mine. They go from freedom. They don't just go to freedom. They go from serving Pharaoh to serving Yahweh. Yahweh is king. They belong to Yahweh. And the firstborns who have the rights and responsibility for the whole clan and tribe, they especially belong to Yahweh because of his grace and presence. And the firstborn theme, we've already seen so much throughout Genesis and now Exodus. It's really, really important in their context because that's where the future was held in the firstborn. That's who inherited, that's also had the responsibility to protect their people. And God's saying, those are mine. I can either give them or take them away. And we've seen that over and over. But just sort of sitting in that and thinking through that and then John 3:16 is a verse that we just not that we just throw out. I mean, we say it so often that it can become emptier than it is. But just thinking about that in the context of this, that really all of our firstborns are God's, but his son, his only son, he owes to no one, but he freely gives to us for our salvation. Just the depth of that within this theme is just pretty amazing
Yeah.
to think through.
Which gives more context to like when you read Colossians 1 and it calls Jesus the firstborn of all creation. Not saying he's created, but like he has this status. But then he is the head of the church and we become like him as the firstborn. So like the people of God are have the status of the firstborn with the responsibility and the role of being the hope of the future, because what he wants to do is change the world through us. And yeah, there's a whole lot to if you want to keep tracing this thread, but we got to stick in Exodus.
Yeah.
So into 13.
Yep.
The whole unleavened bread thing. I mean, I'm not a baker. I don't know. Is there like what's the whole unleavened bread thing mean? I probably could have looked it up, but I remember just thinking. And why was that significant to not?
Well, yeah, again, it was connected to in the Passover preparations
Okay.
being ready quickly.
Okay.
It said like even if you
Yeast
read
just takes time.
Yeah, it takes
time. Yeast is what makes your bread rise. It takes a while. It's better, but they're ready to go
Ready to
because
go.
they're being delivered.
and it's almost like they weren't sure it was going to happen because they didn't have their stuff packed. I don't know
Yeah.
if you caught that when you were reading through. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, they had
Oh, it
to
was
get
all
their
in their
stuff
clothes.
together.
Yeah.
That was the other thing.
Yeah.
It was, the kneading bowls were in their cloaks.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait, what? So it's just, like on their shoulder or something like a shoulder pad. Like, oh no, they probably like wrapped it
Just
up.
wrapped
threw it
everything,
over
and they
the-
got to get out of there
Okay.
quick. Have your
Yeah.
sandals on your feet and your
Yeah.
staff in your hands. Be ready to go.
Without haste. Okay. In a little bit further on, there was something that stuck out to me when we start talking. It's in this section of pillar of cloud and fire in 19, where it says, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him. For Joseph had made the sons of Israel solemnly swear, saying, God will surely visit you and shall carry my bones with you from here. I'm just thinking, like, Moses grew up Egyptian. He's like over in like Mount, like he didn't have the history. Like, I guess the elders
he
kind of told him, like,
was
hey, you need to
nursed
do.
by those Hebrew women. Remember,
Okay.
and that really, I do think that is
Yeah, but
significant
that's
just for that.
young. I mean,
It
when you're
is,
nursing,
but
you're
there's
not-
more to it than that. Like,
Okay.
so a lot of times in the ancient Near East culture, the mother's breast milk was how you really inherited your story and identity. And so him being able to go back to his Hebrew family to be nursed and to be taken care of, that's part of like, he did know, because he did sort of know his story, which is why he tried to strike the Egyptian, or he did strike the Egyptian. So he knew from that family, I think.
Yeah.
His
And-
stories.
And again, remember how Genesis ends. I'm going to read you the last few verses. Joseph said to his brothers, I am about to die, but God will visit you and bring you up out of this land to the land that he swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Then Joseph made the sons of Israel swear, saying, Elohim will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. And Joseph died. And so that's how it ends.
Well, I just think about how long separated that is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hundreds,
Almost
of
400 years.
Yeah,
Their story, I mean, remember whenever God made this covenant with Abraham, whenever he was asleep and they cut the covenant, he said, your descendants are going to be enslaved for 400 years.
yeah.
And then and then Joseph is how they got there, and then this happened, and Moses is taking that. This story is so ingrained, even just within the Exodus, that I think that's why that's there too. The Passover meal, which they will memorialize this through as a people, it's how they'll participate. There's 4 movements to it, and the first one is this dipping of like lettuce in something, and it's to remember Joseph's coat that was dipped in blood whenever his brothers sent him to Egypt. So they're remembering, the first thing they remember is Joseph is how we got here. And then,
Oh, okay.
so it's just,
So he would have been familiar with, because they like
Even
the-
if not Moses,
yeah,
someone.
someone was,
Yeah.
I mean, that's so much a part of this story is Joseph is how we got here, but God is faithful to rescue us from here.
Yeah. Okay. Then we get to 14.
All right. You alluded to this last week, but talk about Red Sea, Reed Sea.
Reed Sea.
Yeah, the Sea
The
of
Sea
Reeds.
of Reeds.
Sea of Reeds.
That's really what.
Wait, did we
it's-
read that in here and I just missed it?
No.
Or are you talking about something else?
Talking about just a
Okay.
an issue.
Well, it's really so the Red Sea. It's that's how it's interpreted, not interpreted. Oh my gosh, translated here, and it's really the Sea of Reeds, and it became the Red Sea eventually. But Sea of Reeds should remind us of how Moses. Remember, I said
Yeah.
they have parallel stories, which is that weird stories is parallel to the Passover that the Israelites just experienced. But he was rescued from death by Pharaoh through the reeds. And now they walk through the Sea of Reeds, is what it's called,
I don't know if
being rescued from Pharaoh.
in week 1, I had an image on my iPad about how like Exodus really is one way to look at it is 2 parts: the story of Moses, his rescue, and how he meets God on the mountain, and then it's repeated in Israel's story. They're rescued through the Sea of Reeds, just like he was in, and then they go meet God on the mountain, which is where we're headed.
Sorry, I didn't.
That's
that
all
was
right.
good.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
It was a couple weeks
Yeah,
ago.
the-
It was actually a few weeks ago.
The
in the way
burning
we've recorded.
bush, and then the pillar, and then it's like the pillars of cloud and fire. So it's the presence of God who goes with them and takes them to the mountain where they'll experience Him.
Yeah, and I think this is initially even where you start to see like the people of Israel, like they're still trusting Moses. It's like, oh yeah, he got us out, like we're free. But then it's starting to build like the anticipation. They go to this place right in front of the thing. Pharaoh starts coming. I guess they start freaking out a little.
I mean,
bit.
that's terrifying.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, oh, they are grumblers. They no matter what God does, they don't trust them. Just like how we are. But I'm like, was picturing that, and that would be terrifying. All of the wrath of Pharaoh, who's all of their sons had just died, and now they're like, all right, you're gone, but now we're going to come just destroy you.
Yeah, and as big of a military as you'd think someone of that like stature would have,
Yeah.
like, what the implications of that.
Yeah. I, for most of my life, as I've read this story and the story of the people of Israel in the wilderness and just all their grumbling, I've had a bit of contempt in my own mind toward them. Like, gosh, they're just, here we go again. They're complaining again. Haven't they seen God's mighty hand and outstretched arm and all the things they've seen? But this time around, I don't know why. I think I probably know why. But like, when I think about for generation after generation, all they've known is enslavement and oppression and just some level of suffering. And it seems like every time, at every turn, they can see more suffering ahead. We're thirsty. We're hungry. There's an army approaching. All of these,
Hopelessness.
yeah. And so it's like it's easy for them to see one bit of suffering after another. And I guess I have set aside my contempt for their grumbling. Not that I think it's okay that they continue to grumble and not trust in Yahweh as He continues to show Himself faithful, but like I kind of get it in a sense more than maybe I ever have. So it is frustrating to read their story, but
No, I mean, I completely agree
they
with
are
that.
suffering people.
They're suffering people, and this is real suffering,
Yeah.
right? This isn't just a Hollywood movie
Right.
where it's like, oh, they're coming, but they're going to be rescued. It's like, no, that's really what happened. Is that they were in front of a body of water, which remember, water is chaos for them. That's like the ultimate scary place for these people, and an army's coming to attack them. I mean, that's terrifying.
Yeah, but he quickly makes a way,
He quickly
does.
makes way. Yeah,
is what it seems like.
Yeah.
Which is another one of those like, for believer, Christians, when you read this stuff, like, man, did this really happen? And it's a hard thing to wrap your mind around physically what's happening here. That waters, whatever the size of the body of water, that it separates, creates dry land enough that 600,000 men, their families, and then a multitude of others and animals, everything, enough to get
Get
in
through.
and get through.
Yeah.
I mean, that's crazy.
It is.
It's not hard. It is hard to wrap your mind around.
This is so you will know that who
Yeah.
Yahweh is,
Yeah.
and you will worship Him. I mean,
yeah.
I agree with you, and it's like, how is this? I can't even picture it.
Yeah.
Like, how would I respond to this? I don't know. And really, I was thinking about Peter in the storm whenever Jesus is walking on the water, right? Not just parting it, but actually walking on top of it. And then Peter starts to walk to him and he starts to sink because he's like, this isn't possible. And he holds out his hand and said, why do you doubt? I mean, it seems like, well, of course he's doubting. He's walking on water, but it's another climactic moment
Yeah.
with water and trust and just the ultimate power God has over creation and for his people.
Yeah. I once, a long time ago, watched a sermon by Tim Keller, who was a pastor from New York City, but he taught on this, the exit, like the going through the sea. And something that has stuck with me all these years is he said, put yourself in the crowd and imagine all the different people you know and the different experiences they may have had in a moment like that. Like there got to be some people that see whatever it is that has happened. Water split, their salvation they can walk through. And some people are pumped. They're excited. They're like, "Can you believe this? Let's run. Let's go." And they're so excited and easily trusting in God and whatever the situation is. And then there's some people that are like,
What if
Yeah.
this is the wall
Yeah.
of
yeah,
water?
they're like, well, this is the only option, so I guess we're going. And then yet
Right.
there are more people who are terrified, struggling to trust, but they just have to go because that's where the mob is going. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter what each person's experience was, they were all saved. Whatever their measure of faith, whether great or small, if they go through, God saves.
Yeah.
And it's just a powerful picture of God is the one who saves.
Yeah.
And God's presence in it. So it's not just that God is the one through Moses, through his participation with his staff, that separates the waters, but it says the pillars, instead of leading them, goes behind them, in between them and this real danger that's coming. I mean, that's God's presence, not only making the way, but protecting them from this danger too.
Yeah.
So he's there with them.
Yeah. I mean, And so I think, it's cool to finally see, we talked about the cosmic battle at play last week. I mean,
Yeah.
this is, I would think, some of the greatness of Pharaoh is not just the buildings that they may have had, but like the military power, the ability to
Horses and chariots.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
and
this
all
is
stuff
like
that-
the Rome of the New Testament.
Yeah,
This is
and
the
so-
pinnacle.
And so here, when it's finally swallows them all up, and they see, I mean, this is like the overcoming
Yeah.
of like,
Again, this is the
done.
waters.
yeah,
This is the ultimate decreation for them. The
Yeah.
chaos of the waters covers them.
yep,
And so they try to throw the babies of the descendants of Abraham in the Nile, but instead they end up in the waters.
yeah, that's crazy. The last verse of 14 and 31, Israel saw the great power that Yahweh used against the Egyptians. So the people feared Yahweh and they believed in Yahweh and his servant Moses. And so the thing that I find interesting even there is that even through all that, it's like all the plagues, all the other stuff, they didn't really believe in. I mean, they probably knew, but after that experience, that was the final. Like,
The ultimate.
okay,
Yeah.
he's our guy. This is. I mean, it quickly turns away from that, like next chapter. But it seems like after seeing an experience, I mean, yeah, just the blood, all those things, and even though they were spared from something, even witnessing that, like where everything else is dark except for over where they're living. I mean, not trusting, but okay, yeah, this is our guy. What it seems like it wasn't until after that and maybe that was seeing the whole Egyptian army Pharaoh being wiped out.
Actually delivered.
Yeah.
They're gone.
Yeah.
They're not pursuing us. We're actually safe now.
Yeah, the threat is gone.
Yeah.
It's over.
We're on the other side. We're free. Which then it jumps into, I guess, this
Song of
15, the
Moses.
Song of Moses.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is this like kind of celebratory.
It's like the poem that describes the whole saga, but it's a way to just memorialize it.
Yeah.
Just like the Passover meal does.
Yeah. So I say anything significant about 15, the Song of Moses, or
I just think it's something people would have gone back to, I guess, summarize, memorialize what God
Yeah.
had done. There are moments like this throughout the scriptures where it would be called a song or a poem. I'm thinking of like Hannah. We're going to get to in 1 Samuel, or in Luke. What's Zechariah's wife? Mary's cousin, Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Like there are these moments where there's these songs and it's just beauty described. Like it's a beautiful description of God's power, His deliverance, His power over evil, His acceptance of the humble, all that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like cause for worship.
Yeah,
Like, when
there you go,
experience
yes.
that, it's
And he
like-
said, what's the purpose is to show all of them that I am Yahweh, and so that you may worship. And so this is that moment when they're delivered and then they worship. I mean, that was the point, and they're doing it right here. I love how it talks like Miriam's song. You know, she gathered and she celebrated. So again, with Moses, so she's the one who saw Moses be drawn out of the water by the daughter of Pharaoh. She witnessed it, and then she participated in it. And then here you have her witness Yahweh saving the Israelites through the water, and she celebrates. So you have like the end of that parallel with Miriam.
Okay.
Okay, bitter water made sweet.
Yep.
They're thirsty, then they're hungry.
Yeah. Right away.
Right? Yeah.
Thank you, God, for delivering us.
Yeah.
Now what?
We're thirsty
Yeah.
and hungry.
Isn't that how road trips work, though?
Yeah.
But I even think like it is hilarious, and like Lance said, it's like easy to like make fun, and I do too. I'm like, man, come on, guys, get it together. But it also is just like a reminder that we're redeemed, we're set free unto not just the promised land, but this trust, this radical walk and trust with God. I mean, this is like they're already not yet. You know, when they're walking through the wilderness even before they get to Mount Sinai and then before the promised land, it's this understanding of what it looks like to live with God. And it really requires this daily dependence and trust in Him.
So you said,
And it's the same for us.
yeah, you said it's there already, not yet. Explain that in our, like,
Yeah.
for somebody that doesn't
Yes,
like,
yes.
grab hold of that language.
So our already not yet is we have experienced the fruit of the sacrifice that our Lamb has given us, that Jesus, the Lamb who is slain, gives us forgiveness for our sins. He gives us our spirit. He lives with us. He lives among us. He's working in us. We're a part of His kingdom that's spreading the gospel throughout the world. But there is still sin in the world. There's brokenness in the world. We're still broken. We experience suffering. It's not the culmination of the story yet. That is coming. When He returns, all things will be made new. And right now we live in this dependence and surrender to Him and in Him and trust in what's going to happen. Because we look back and we trust because of what He's done for us. So we really have a very similar story, which we'll talk about eventually. But we trust in Him and hope in Him, but we're in a similar space. It's good to remember that.
So I think it's interesting too, like how quickly not only are they like, it says, they're grumbling against Moses and Aaron, but how quickly they're like, oh man, it was so much better.
Yeah. We're
Like,
sitting around the meat pots.
yeah, back in Egypt, which is, I know you said
We
the
had food.
contempt for the like.
Yeah.
It is hard to wrap your mind around. Man, it was better. That suffering was better. Maybe it's because that was they knew it was what was known. They hadn't experienced this type.
And they still don't know what's coming. They don't know what's ahead. They're right now, they're in the middle of nowhere. They're hungry and they're thirsty and they're carrying everything they own.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do think even like with Abraham, with Moses, with the people, like those are the representatives, doubt and fear, that's a part of where we are as humans. Even though we experience the signs and wonders and goodness and steadfast love of God, we still all do it. And so I think for me, it's like, that's okay, right? It's okay that that's going to be a part of what we do, but we still have to be obedient and faithful and follow, even in the midst of that.
And so ultimately, God hears their grumbling and He makes a way where it's like at nighttime, maybe they wake up in the morning and there's how
Manna
would we
from heaven, bread?
Yeah, but there's something on the ground. Go collect it, but don't take too much. Just take what
Yeah.
you need for the day.
That's
And
pretty important.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, you imagine they want to take too much,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They're in survival mode. Why wouldn't you take?
Scarcity mindset.
What if he
Yeah.
doesn't show up tomorrow?
Yeah, look at all of this now. We should take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah, and it's also like the garden, like, oh, there's this abundance, but like don't take from this though. I mean, it's a hearkening back to that. Like, I'm providing for you.
They
Trust
see it all
trust
and they wanna
in
take.
trust in
Yeah.
my provision.
There you go,
Yeah.
Ted.
Yeah.
See and take.
I was just saying what she said. It seemed to apply here
Yes.
too.
Yeah.
So yeah, because whatever they kept and left over, it would rot and stink, and
Yep.
ultimately he makes a way for them to have enough for 2 days on the one
Sabbath,
day, on the
yeah.
Sabbath day.
It is a teaching of dependence.
Yep.
Yep.
And then same thing with the water. They're thirsty, right?
Yep.
And so here again, he makes a way, and then we finish up with this, like, all of a sudden, like, they're being attacked,
Yeah. There's war.
and
There's a lot of war coming.
and we hear this is the first time we hear about Joshua, right? I don't know if we had heard in 10. So Joshua did it, or wait, where did he say? No, so Moses said to Joshua,
Yeah.
right? Is this
Yep.
the first time we're hearing of
I think
him?
so.
I mean, he's a pretty big character.
Yeah.
moving
He's the
forward.
next, he's going to inherit the leadership
Yeah.
Yep.
from Moses. Yeah.
I think we read his book next after this.
Oh, cool. Well, so this is it's just an interesting, again, story of this is the first time they're being, people are trying to come and attack them. And it's like Joshua's down there fighting and Moses has
yeah.
to hold the staff up. And when he's got it up in the air,
Because what is
they're
the staff?
winning.
What's the staff the sign of?
God's power.
His royal authority
Authority, yeah.
and power.
Yeah.
And so it really is sort of random, but it is supposed to symbolize like we are under the authority of Yahweh. He's our king, and he's the one who's actually fighting this battle. And so we have to be under his authority to win.
But he gets tired. And so when it lowers, they
Yes.
lose. When it raises,
Yeah.
it's, and then people come alongside him to help hold it up. And so,
Moses is the great leader that like they will talk about over and over in the New Testament too, but he needs others.
Oh,
He
yeah.
cannot do what God has commissioned him to do and empowered him to do by himself. He can't.
yeah.
Yeah, so if you think about just sort of our categories, so we have the Exodus, they're becoming God's people, a nation. It was one man, and then it was his family, and then they were tribes, and he's turning them to a nation right now. Joshua is introduced right here because it's this battle, because Joshua is going to be in the context of the conquest and the giving of the land that was promised
He's got
to
to
Abraham
fight,
and all the
yeah.
patriarchs. And so we're going to get to that part of it. We have the people, and then we're going to get to, which we're going to keep talking about, and then the land, the people and the place.
And it ends with basically saying Yahweh will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So it's like, man, this battle, it's not, we may have won the battle, but there's still more war to come. But
Yeah.
Which we'll see.
yeah. Well, do we see
With
it next
Joseph.
week?
And with
I
Joshua.
don't know.
Yeah. No, we won't see it
reading
next week. No. So we're about to get into Israel at Mount Sinai, where
Okay.
they're going to spend.
Oh, yeah.
What happens next? They are at Mount Sinai for a year. So maybe as you start to read this, just have that in mind. Like they're going to camp in this one place, have manna on the ground every morning, except on the Sabbath day. Like this is going to take place for a year.
All right. Well, I'm excited. Read it next week.
Next week.
Join us.
You can subscribe to receive additional resources to help you study the story of Scripture at clearcreekresources.org. We'll see you next week.